New at 10, health officials in Utah are investigating what they say is a unique case of Zika. An elderly man's caretaker has contracted the virus. The Salt Lake County man died in June after testing positive for the virus, the first Zika-related death in the U.S. Health officials still aren't certain how the man's caretaker contracted Zika. The caretaker had not recently traveled to an affected area or had sexual contact with an infected person. But they say the CDC is helping them look into it.
Utah's public health system is working closely with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, which has a team here in Utah, in a joint investigation.
Health officials do not believe the case poses a threat to the general public. They said the caretaker experienced a mild illness, as with most Zika patients, and has fully recovered. A Nevada neighborhood is looking to stop an invasion problem, not from trespassers or burglars, but from bugs. Sydney Schofield reports.
The Morris family has lived in this home for 25 years, and they've never seen anything like this.
They were just completely covering the cement, like it was black.
These tiny little bugs showed up all over their house Friday, and they panicked.
I mean, it was ready to leave. That's what we were ready to do.
So they reached out to KOLO 8 News Now for help.
And I hope that these things will go away, because I'd sure have to replace everything on my patio.
We spoke to an entomologist to find out what to do if your home gets invaded, because the scary thing is they don't really respond to pesticides or repellent.
If you do spray them, they're going to probably come right back.
They should go away on their own in about a week or two, and they show up because they've lost their food source.
This out here is our desert, and that's where they're coming from.
It's likely these pests moved to the Morris home after the field behind their house dried up. This Spanish Springs neighborhood is not the only one dealing with this. Northern Nevada Pest Control says they've had lots of calls all over our region about these false chinch bugs.
It's an insect that develops in particularly high numbers when we have nice wet winters and cool springs.
The good news? They're harmless. They rarely bite and don't carry diseases. They only threaten your peace of mind.
They'll get on you, but they, just feel like anything else. They brush them right off. It's just creepy to have this many.
So if you do see these tiny false chinch bugs, it's best to just wait them out.
In other news tonight, Queen calling out Donald Trump yet again. The band not happy that Trump defied their wishes and used one of its most well-known songs. At the Republican National Convention, Donald Trump walked on stage to "We Are the Champions" before introducing his wife Melania. Today, the band tweeted an unauthorized use at the Republican Convention against our wishes. Last June, the band's lead guitarist wrote that Trump had not asked permission to use the song during his campaign. And the opening of the National Museum of African American History and Culture, well, it doesn't happen for another couple of months, but reporters and members of the media got a sneak peek today. The Washington-based 400,000 square foot museum contains thousands of artifacts, from tiny slips of paper to a segregation-era train car. Huge cranes had to be used to get the rail car into that museum. There's also a Cadillac that belonged to legendary musician Chuck Berry, an airplane flown by the Tuskegee Airmen, a group of African-American pilots who served during World War II. Then President George W. Bush signed a bipartisan bill funding this project back in 2003, but some of the money for the $540 million museum came from donors. The story told by the museum starts 90 feet underground and tells of slavery and segregation, but becomes more hopeful as visitors ascend the floors.
This museum has to help us all illuminate all the dark corners and come to grips with who we once were.
President Barack Obama, who is featured in the museum, will be on hand for the grand opening in September. The attorneys for the South Carolina man charged in a deadly church shooting are asking the court to drop the federal case against him. Prosecutors say 22-year-old Dylan Roof opened fire inside of Emmanuel AME Church in Charleston. 9 people were killed, 3 others were injured. Federal prosecutors are seeking the death penalty in the case. Roof's attorneys argue the federal government doesn't have the constitutional authority to prosecute him. They want the case left to state authorities. Roof is facing 33 federal charges. Jury selection for the trial is scheduled to start in November.
Opening statements today for the highest-ranking officer charged in the death of Freddie Gray. Lieutenant Brian Rice faces several charges, including involuntary manslaughter. His legal team opted for a bench trial. They'll argue the case before the same judge who's already acquitted 2 other officers charged in Gray's death. Freddie Gray died a week after suffering a spinal injury following his April 2015 arrest in West Baltimore. His death sparked outrage against police brutality across the country.
An Army sergeant charged after walking away from his post in Afghanistan appeared in court today. A pretrial hearing for Bo Bergdahl was held today at Fort Bragg in North Carolina. A military judge ordered the government to turn over emails from top military officials. The emails will go to Bergdahl's defense attorneys to determine if the case has been unfairly influenced. Bergdahl was held captive for 5 years by insurgents after walking off his post in 2009.
So we're talking about a period of 7 years out of this young man's life. He's a little over 30. He's lost a great deal of time that I don't know that there's a way to restore it, but it certainly would be nice for this chapter to be over.
Bergdahl's military trial is scheduled to start in early 2017.
A Pennsylvania judge has cleared the way for Bill Cosby's case to go to trial. The 78-year-old entertainer is accused of drugging and assaulting a woman at his Philadelphia home in 2004. Cosby's defense team had asked the judge to throw out those charges, arguing that his accuser should have been required to testify at a pre-hearing in May and face cross-examination. But the law in Pennsylvania does not require an alleged victim to testify at a preliminary hearing. The judge ruled today that there is enough evidence for the entertainer to stand trial. Although that case is set to move forward, no trial date has been scheduled.
A fast food chain hacked. The data breach that has affected more than 1,000 Wendy's locations.
And we are expecting to feel the heat and humidity back on the rise for Friday with heat indices near 100 degrees.
A man accused of stealing items on dozens of occasions in 2 counties, now behind bars. But it wasn't what he took, but what he left behind that landed him in custody. Officials from the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office arrested 29-year-old Patrick Miller of Arcadia on Tuesday. Miller is believed to be connected to at least 30 robberies in Hamilton and Madison counties. The arrest was made after detectives found Miller's wallet at the scene of a burglary. Investigators found Miller inside of a barn that contained many items believed to have been stolen. Miller's bond was set at $50,000.
2 black men fatally shot by police in 2 days. The cases have sparked outrage across the country and reaction from the White House. A warning, the video you're about to see may be disturbing for viewers. Most recently, a woman live streamed the aftermath of her fiance's shooting in Minnesota after a traffic stop. The man can be seen in the driver's side of the vehicle, slumped over after being shot by an officer several times. In the video, the woman says they were pulled over for a broken taillight. She says her fiance, Philando Castile, told the officer he had a gun and a license to carry. And when he reached for his wallet to get his ID, the woman says the police officer shot him 4 times. The incident came a day after a man was fatally shot by police in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. President Obama spoke today about law enforcement bias.
There are problems across our criminal justice system. There are biases, some conscious and unconscious, that have to be rooted out. That's not an attack on law enforcement. That is reflective of the values that the vast majority of law enforcement bring to the job.
So the conversation as well as rallies for racial justice have stretched across the country from Dallas to Minneapolis to Chicago, New York as well. Lots of people across the country demanding answers. We actually have a live look for you. This is in Minneapolis, the location of that second shooting. The governor there has said he believes race is an issue. Again, this is a rally for justice happening live right now. He's asked the U.S. Department of Justice to investigate the situation. We'll continue to follow the story for you. That conversation about race and policing has also made its way to Indianapolis. This conversation happened tonight at the Indianapolis Museum of Art, and 24-Hour News 8's Megan Sanctorum was there. Megan, what were they hoping to accomplish? Indiana Governor Mike Pence appeared before the American Conservative Union. Pence spoke on Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump and what makes him the right man for the Oval Office.
He's a builder. He's a fighter. He's a father, and he's a patriot. I have to tell you, having had some time to spend with this good man and his family, I know that Donald Trump will be a great President of the United States of America because his heart beats with the heart of the American people.
Pence also compared Trump to Ronald Reagan. He says, like Reagan, Trump never lost touch with everyday Americans, despite big career achievements. This was Pence's first official appearance since being named Trump's running mate.
And when the Republican presidential nominee was officially named, one person not watching was President Barack Obama. White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest said that the president has decided not to watch any of the RNC. Earnest says the president's free time preferences tend toward the athletic rather than the political.
The president's not making some principled statement registering some kind of protest by not watching the Republican convention. I think he merely is making a choice about how to spend the small amount of free time that he has in the evening.
President Obama is scheduled to speak during the Democratic National Convention, which begins July 25th. He'll appear alongside Vice President Joe Biden on Wednesday, the 27th. When it comes to both conventions, 24-Hour News 8 has you covered. Tomorrow night, we have extended coverage starting at 9 p.m., ramping up to Governor Pence's speech at the RNC. And our political reporter Jim Shella is in Cleveland. We'll be checking in with him here in just a few minutes.